Test, test.
Go ahead and call this meeting to order, November 2nd, 2021, Gilbert Town Council. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I would like to ask Councilmember Yentes to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me for the pledge. I pledge of allegiance.
I'll invite Pastor John Moten, is that correct, John, to the podium for our invocation this evening. Pastor John is with Central Christian Church.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. Let us pray. Most Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful community we all call home. We thank you for the children who play in streets and parks, enjoy so many things that are to the benefit of everyone who calls the city of Gilbert home. We thank you for the hardworking families and for what they mean as they contribute and are participants of such a great moment. Thank you, Lord, for the wisdom that you provided to the council here. Lord, help them to discern, help them to guide, help them to serve faithfully with all you've entrusted them with. And Lord, thank you for this wonderful community of so much journey and stories. Lord, a collaboration of just how wonderful and diverse you are. Thank you for this wonderful city and all those who protect it and all those who serve. Father, guide every conversation and every decision that is made here tonight. And Lord, may we continually be faithful with what you trust us with, serving you and making this a better place. We thank you, Lord, so much for what you've given and what you bless us with. And we pray this in your holy, precious name. And all of God's children said, and thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. We appreciate you coming out this evening. If I could have the clerk conduct the roll call, please.
Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jan Kaprowski.
Here.
Councilmember Scott Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lauren Hendricks. He may be available on Teams. I will verify. Councilmember Scott September.
Here.
Councilmember Kathy Tilkey.
Here.
And Councilmember Amy Yentes.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Chevelle. We will now move on to the presentations and proclamations. If I could ask Peyton Parker to please come down and join Councilmember Tilkey for the proclamation declaring the week of November 8th, 2021 as Veterans Week in Gilbert.
Well, good evening. Peyton, thanks for joining us today, and thank you for your service on our Veterans Committee. Can you hear me out there? Okay, I know my voice doesn't carry. This proclamation is in honor of Veterans Week in Gilbert, Arizona. Whereas Veterans Day, November 11th, is set aside annually for celebrating our military veterans and was begun as a commemoration of the end of hostilities of World War I, which went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, And whereas November 11th marks a day to honor Americans veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. And whereas, like the heroes before them, today a new generation of men and women are fighting for freedom around the globe. And whereas, in honoring our veterans, we also wish to remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice, laying down their lives that we may live in freedom. And whereas, long after leaving the uniform behind, many veterans continue to serve our community as public servants and mentors, parents, and community leaders. And whereas we honor our veterans with ceremonies on this day, let our actions strengthen the bond between a nation and her warriors. And whereas on Veterans Day, we pay tribute to the service and sacrifice of the men and women who, in defense of our freedom, have bravely worn the uniform of the United States. Every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, and Coast Guardsman has earned the lasting gratitude of the American people. Now, therefore, I, Bridget Peterson, Mayor of the Town of Gilbert, Arizona, do hereby proclaim the week of November 8th, 2021 as Veteran Weeks in Gilbert, Arizona. I encourage Gilbert citizens to recognize the valor and the sacrifice of our veterans and thank them for their service to our country. I invite civic and fraternal organizations, places of worship, schools, businesses, and the media to support this national observance with commemorative expressions and programs. Bridget Peterson, Mayor. I apologize to all the sailors for saying that wrong. I have the deepest respect for all of you. And Peyton, thank you for being here. Did you want to say a few words?
Thank you very much. We're really excited for the event. It's on November 10th. It's in the Gilbert Regional Park. It's going to start at 5:30. Got some great events, patriotic music, food trucks. It's going to be fun. At 6:30, the ceremony starts. Got a great guest speaker lined up. Thank you for the support. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, a picture? Okay.
In honor of us just proclaiming next week as Veterans Week, would anybody that is in the room this evening that has served in the military please stand? Currently serving or a veteran. Thank you for your service to our country. Now I will pass the agenda on to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now move on to communications from citizens. The communications from citizens portion on the agenda provides our citizens an opportunity to identify for the town council matters of interest or concern related to town government that are not on the printed agenda. Under the provisions of Arizona Open Meeting Law, the town council is prohibited from responding to issues that have not been properly noticed. We will be listening and we will not be able to respond to you aside from thanking you for your comments. We ask that all speakers observe our common standards of decorum and courtesy. Personal attacks, political speeches, or threats of political action are inappropriate. This includes clapping, making any other disruption. When I call your name, please come forward to the podium, state your name and place of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. We have one request to speak tonight, and that is Bill Spence.
You hear me okay? My name is Bill Spence. I'm from Gilbert, Arizona. Mayor Peterson, Vice Mayor Kaprowski, and council members. I was here at a council meeting last week when a rather distraught gentleman addressed the council during comments from citizens. I couldn't determine what his exact grievances were. However, he was obviously upset about a number of things and finished his comments by telling the council to grow a pair. I was stunned by what seemed to be a suggestion that growing male genitalia would be necessary for a majority female council to effectively do its job. I have served alongside every woman on this council, and during my military service, I was forward deployed into war zones with some of the greatest female warfighters in our nation's military. I could not disagree any more strongly with the inferences made about women. I find it unfathomable that these misogynistic and sexist beliefs could be held true by any member of our society. These misguided values simply have no place in Gilbert, or our country for that matter. I would normally call for an apology to be made, but we are all about free speech, and everybody has the right to speak their mind. Because these comments were so reprehensible and offensive, I had to consider that perhaps there was another meaning to the statement. I remember my former colleague, Councilmember Jared Taylor, pushed an initiative to plant trees throughout Gilbert. It dawned on me that the statement may not be a crass idiom after all, but maybe something more literal, like actually growing a pear or a pear tree. A metaphorical olive branch, if you will, that symbolizes a willingness to work together with the town on important issues that are affecting our lives. My dear friends at one of our local nurseries helped me find a young pear tree, and I was assured that this little guy would grow and someday bear fruit. Hopefully this gives a new and more appropriate meaning to the statement at the last council meeting. With this new perspective, I'm able to agree on a few items that were addressed at the last meeting. I agree that the council should never rubber stamp staff recommendations and should continue to thoroughly review and challenge input from the staff. I also agree that the tail should never wag the dog. I'll tell you what that means to me. We are a nation of laws that are derived in part by our values of human beings. Our town council and staff are empowered by the residents to create, interpret, enforce, and adjudicate the rules by which we live. To ignore any of these responsibilities would make our town no better than a lawless and corrupt nation, or California, whichever sounds more appropriate. It is your responsibility to promote and protect the fundamental values of our residents and the values that have allowed Gilbert to become the town that we are today. Our laws and ordinances are a reflection of our values and are created to ensure our safety, prosperity, and well-being. If you feel that an ordinance cannot be equally applied and fairly enforced, you must change it and properly enforce it. If you feel that an ordinance is not serving its intended purpose, you must change it or eliminate it. If you feel that an ordinance cannot stand the challenge of a lawsuit, you must change it to something that you're willing to stand behind and be prepared to fiercely litigate for what is right. And if change is deemed necessary, appropriate action must be taken in a timely manner without regard to the political environment. It's never too late to do the right thing. It's okay to make hard decisions during hard times. That's what the public expects from you.
Please make your final statement, Bill.
Pears pair well with wine. And to the gentleman that unwittingly inspired me to come talk to you this evening, I have a big, juicy pear for you as a symbol of Gilbert kindness and my willingness to work alongside anyone that shares my vision to keep Gilbert great. Thank you for your dedication and hard work. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. That concludes our communications from citizens, and we'll move to our consent calendar.
Mayor Peterson, may we have a brief pause to test audio for Councilmember Hendricks?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chevelle.
Test, does it work? Test.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll move to the consent calendar. We have items number 6 and 10 that wish to be pulled by Councilmember Yentes. Councilmember Hendricks, do you have any items to pull from the consent calendar today?
I do not.
Thank you. Before we discuss items 6 and 10, may I have a motion to approve items 2 through 5, 7 through 9, and 11 through 18?
So moved. Second.
Please vote. We're waiting on a few votes to come in. We're going to have to do a voice vote. Will the council members that are in favor of those items, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Councilmember Yentes, item number 6.
I'm just relieved that wasn't my, well, I have one button to push. I'm glad that wasn't just me. Thank you. I won't elaborate on these items 6 and 10. I'll talk about them both. I've pulled these in the past. It's just a matter of what I believe is excessive cost. So I just would like a separate vote on each of them, knowing that we'll parse them out when we vote on them.
May we get a motion to approve item number 6?
So moved.
Second.
With Councilmember Hendricks on the phone, can we just do the voice vote? Okay. All in favor of item number 6, please say aye.
Aye.
No?
All opposed?
No.
Councilmember Hendricks, could you state?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. That passes 5-2. May I have a motion to approve item number 10?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of item number 10, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
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 Thank you. That passes 5-2. And that concludes our consent calendar this evening.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We will move on to our public hearing items. We have items 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, 23A and 24 that was part of your addendum. Would anyone like a presentation on any of these items before I go ahead and open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing on these items. Do we have any residents wishing to speak, Vice Mayor?
24 is a council administration item.
No? Thank you. Oh, excuse me. It was, what was the, 23A, sorry. It's also down in the lower part of the agenda. Thank you, sorry. So that would be 19 through 23 and 23A. I'll open the public hearing. We have no request to speak. I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And could I have everyone in favor please say aye? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Oh, sorry. I skipped right over the motion. Skipped right over it. Can I have a motion, please? It's one of those days.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Motion passes 7-0. That ends our public hearing portion of our agenda. Moving on to administrative items. We have item number 24, Council Administration to consider the acceptance of the budget report and contingency report for the first quarter of FY 2022. Are we having a presentation on this, or is it just for, okay, thank you. No presentation. Anyone have any comments or questions on item 24? Moving on to 25, boards, commissions, and committees, report from council liaisons.
I think we have to accept it though, right?
We do need a motion?
We do, yes.
Sorry. Boy,
Motion to approve item 24.
thank you.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Motion passes 7-0. I'm having an off day. Sorry, everyone. Moving on to item 25, reports from council members on liaisons for your boards and commissions. Does anyone have anything to report? Seeing none. Moving on to policy items. Policy item number 26, policy to consider approval of a revision to council policy number 2012-03. Attorney Payne, would you like to do the intro for this item, or the council members?
No, happy to. Mayor, council, This item was placed on the agenda at the request of 3 council members, Councilmember September, Hendricks, and Anderson, and it would be making a slight modification to the Code of Ethics. It's called the Code of Ethics, but it's actually not in the town code. It's a council-approved policy, and what it would do would be clarify when if a Code of Ethics complaint gets filed and it gets investigated and there's a report from an outside investigator or recommendations from the town attorney's office, it would clarify that one or more council members could agendize that, and it also would add a provision that would allow for a timeline or put a deadline in there that if council does not take action on putting it on a council agenda, then the complaint would be administratively dismissed within 10 days.
Any discussion, comments, questions on this item? Council members that asked for this item to be placed on the agenda, do you have any comments?
I'll make a quick comment about it. I was interested in doing something like this because of the exact nature of what just recently happened. We went through a very exhaustive process on some ethics complaints, had a report done, and we talked about it in a public meeting. And we've since then had another complaint filed, which is essentially the same thing. And it'll be a waste of our time, a waste of taxpayer time and money to just rehash the same thing. So I thought that in order to, and I think this is what Councilmember Hendricks had in mind too, is that when we know that we are seeing some frivolous complaints like that we can dismiss them without having to spend time and money having them researched and a report written, and we debated in public. And so that was what led to putting this item on the agenda and revising that language.
Can I speak, Mayor? Thank you. So Councilmember Hendricks kind of championed this idea, and I definitely thought it had merit for discussion here on the dais. I don't necessarily know that the language is exactly what it could be, so I definitely want to get input from the rest of council. And maybe this is something that needs more discussion. Maybe 14 days is a better cure period. But I do think that it's important, like Councilmember Anderson said, that we confirm that there's merit to a complaint for an ethics violation. And if a complaint doesn't rise to the standard of having merit, then I don't believe that it would warrant discussion from the dais or public dialogue. So I think the concept is sound, and I wanted to have some discussion about it. And that's why I agreed to add this to the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I had a question for Chris. In other areas of our code, do we specify the difference between days and business days?
We do, Councilmember Yentes, we do in certain areas. We put 10 days. We could, if council wanted to, we could clarify business days or calendar days to make it a little more clear. So if there is a motion to do so, we could add that language in. And also just wanted to clarify one point. On 8.1, the beginning, the new language would say upon the request of one or more council members. The code, as you're aware, requires that for an item to be added to the agenda by a council, it's either through by the mayor or 3 council members. So having one council member add it would be an exception to that rule, but certainly that's within the purview of council if you decide that one council member could agendize or more.
Vice Mayor?
I don't disagree that the Code of Ethics might need a once-over and a review. However, I'd like some additional time and to do it all at once instead of changing small items here and there and maybe having a study session or other just more thoughtful research behind any changes made and making sure that we have consensus on those changes moving forward.
Councilmember Tilke?
Thank you, Mayor. Could you explain how that process would work if we needed some more time? We need to give direction on what more information we need and then schedule a time to talk about it again?
Mayor, Councilmember Tilke, yes, just give us direction on how you would like that to go. It could be at a study session, at a future council meeting. We could do research and talk concepts as far as look at what other cities do, present ideas, and then go back at a later date, draft it, and then bring a draft to council. We could just bring a draft to council directly based on what we see as staff, however you would like to do it.
Councilmember Anderson?
I'm all for looking at the entire policy, but I do have a concern that these will continue to be submitted, and that as they are submitted, and if they're no different than any of the others we've received, we're spending and wasting money having somebody give us a report about each individual one. So time is of the essence, I believe.
Right, but with some of those elements or items that are coming in now, is there a way that the town can simply address why one of those items may or may not be fully investigated because of a recent investigation or a repeat?
Attorney Payne just did that on last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mayor, Council Member, or Vice Mayor Kaprowski, the answer is the code says that when a complaint's received, it goes to the clerk. Clerk sends it to the town attorney's office. Town attorney then decides whether to make recommendations or to send it to an outside investigator. If it's the case that it's a pure legal issue, we'll take it on internally. But if there's an investigation that's needed, facts to be discovered, we have to send that out to avoid conflicts. The difficulty with it as it currently is the staff, the attorney's office, the clerk, whomever it is, does not have discretion to dismiss a complaint on its own if there's no basis, nor should, I think we should have that authority administratively to do so as staff. Ethics complaint against a council member is something that the council should decide. So as written right now, there's no way for a complaint to be dismissed administratively, and certainly it would have to go to council for council to make that decision to dismiss the complaint or to hear it and make a decision on it.
So you're saying that there has to be changes to the code to administratively dismiss those items. There isn't other discussion or ways?
As currently written, no. And that's kind of it's a gray area right now, and something that we looked at with the latest one administratively, there's nothing we can do with it. We give the recommendation, and then that's all we do. So that's why the addition of that 10-day shot clock, you could call it, deadline, timeline, council take action. Otherwise, it's then deemed dismissed pursuant to the policy without action of any staff members.
Councilmember Hendricks, would you like to comment?
I agree with the comments that have been made. I guess we have another pending ethics complaint. If I understand correctly, regardless of the opinion we got from the town attorney, we have to discuss this complaint at a meeting if we don't change the code.
So, Councilmember Hendricks, this is Chris Payne. So that's the code as written, as we've interpreted, and I've talked to the town clerk about this. There's a discrepancy or conflict in the language right now, because what it says is the town clerk may agendize it, and that's in section 7, and then the next section, 8.1, says the town council shall discuss it at a meeting. It does not say how that gets agendized. And so that's kind of the discrepancy is If it doesn't require anyone to agendize it, and it doesn't require the town clerk to do so, but then it also says it shall be discussed, you could interpret it to say, well, it has to be agendized, or you could also interpret it to say, if it is agendized by council members, then they shall discuss it. And that's part of the struggle that we're having with the current code.
To handle any current or future ethics complaints that come in, but to avoid the expenditure, the financial expenditure on investigation, can they come straight to council for discussion to determine whether they should be dismissed?
Vice Mayor Kaprowski, that's certainly something we could build into a new policy to have if that's what the decision was, whether it's in the code.
Would that be under the current policy?
Under the current policy, no. It goes right to the clerk and to the attorney's office. So that would have to be built into a new code.
And then from the attorney's office, it has to go to investigation, and there's no other mechanism to evaluate?
So right now, it's the attorney's office makes the decision whether or not it needs to be sent to outside counsel for investigation. And if not, it will make recommendations internally, which is what we recently did. And that's where it goes. It's just recommendations. It can't be dismissed by the attorney's office.
What follows the recommendations?
That's kind of under the current code. That's where we are. Is it says it goes back to the clerk, and then the clerk may agendize it, and then the next section says the council shall discuss it at a public meeting, but it doesn't say how it gets agendized. It doesn't require anyone to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I've got one more comment, Mayor.
Yes, please go ahead.
Essentially what happens here on our current code is anyone, not even a Gilbert citizen, but anyone could file an issue and call it a ethics complaint. And our current code requires that it be investigated, and then it says we shall discuss it at a public meeting. Essentially anyone, not even a Gilbert citizen, is able to agendize some topic no matter how far-fetched it is. A single elected council member cannot put an item on the agenda, but absolutely anyone on the planet could call something an ethics complaint, and it would require us to discuss it at a public meeting. If not a single council member wants to discuss it, it shouldn't be on our agenda. This isn't a meeting of the public. It's a meeting of the council held in public.
Chris, could you please outline how you handled this one on Friday? Because that one, I think you interpreted it differently in this case because you're asking for it to be dismissed. Or recommending, not asking, recommending. And so between you and Chiavelli, you sent something out to council on Friday, and I think we're maybe missing that step in this discussion.
Mayor Peterson, members of council, when Attorney Payne did provide his recommendation to my office, I wanted to get that to you all as soon as possible, so I did send it to you all Friday morning. In my email, because we have that confusion within the different parts of the policy, my email stated if 3 members of council would like to place this on a future agenda to let me know. Otherwise, we would be accepting Attorney Payne's recommendation to dismiss it. But there is that part, we don't know administratively how long do we wait for that, because nothing directs us to do so. So it's kind of out there pending with you all until we get further direction on whether this needs to be on an agenda or when we feel comfortable accepting that it should be dismissed.
Mayor, if I might, I don't know that I want to have perfect be the enemy of the good. I think this is kind of a neat, simple patch for now. Whether we decide, I mean, obviously it took us months to go over a logo design standards. So a lot of these things, because of the process of trying to include all the stakeholders and vetting things, takes a long time. I think that this is, at least I like that there's a timeline built in it, to our clerk's point, that it gives them a little bit of clarity in the meantime as far as how it gets agendized. The last statement, obviously, if it's deemed that it's dismissed with prejudice, they can't just keep bringing them back. So I think all those points are pretty good about this. I don't know that I want a big, long, exhaustive process for an issue that we can kind of do a good enough job fixing in the meantime, and then maybe take a broader look at some of the other areas that have been brought up, which I think are relevant as well. So I'd feel comfortable supporting this tonight. If it's a matter of just logistically for the clerk's office, if they need any clarity on that 10 days, so that we're making sense as far as when the agenda has to get out and we're meeting public notice, I think this does that. But if there's anything we can tweak there, I would feel comfortable moving forward with it tonight, knowing that we're still going to take a broader look.
Councilmember September.
Mayor, I agree with Councilmember Yentes. I think it's a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow, but I want to make sure, how do we build into we need to build it into our decision tonight or motion that we will take a closer look at the totality of the policy and make sure that we can fix everything. Like I said, I'm okay with the idea of this being a good patch, but I don't want to forget that we need to fix and take a look at the bigger policy. How do we do that?
It would be through your motion, but any other comments or questions before we move on or have a motion?
Mayor Peterson, just to clarify if council wanted to make a motion and proceed with this language or revise it, we could do so. And then the motion would not need to include, the follow-up. That can just be direction that you give us right now, whether you want staff to come back at a study session, if you want to create a subcommittee to have some council member input on that and create rules, however you want to do that, that can be done just through some direction.
Councilmember Hendricks, any final comments?
I'm good, but thank you.
The part that I am most uncomfortable with is the one council member being able to ask to put this on an agenda. It conflicts with everything else that we do in our policies and code, and I like consistency, and that concerns me, and I think that I haven't had enough time to review this. It's been just 24 hours, and I haven't had enough time to review this to even work out all of what the unintended consequences could be, because it was such short notice to have it amended and put on this agenda. So I'm not comfortable with the way that it is worded.
Mayor, if I might motion to approve item 26 with the change upon the request of 3 or more council members or the mayor to be consistent with policy. That would be my only suggested change, if that's possible. Is calendar, okay, so sorry, can I actually ask that question in the middle of a motion?
Sure.
Yes.
I would defer to the clerk's office whether calendar days, business days, or business days are 4 days, so I would think calendar days would be necessary.
I think calendar days is probably easier on our team to get that agendized if needed, but whatever the direction is of council.
So with 2 changes, the first that was already mentioned and clarification of 10 calendar days.
I have a motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Yentes, second by Councilmember Anderson. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone, for the good discussion.
Did we give direction?
I think staff heard that we gave direction to have some feedback.
Yes, we could get feedback, but is there anything in particular, would you like it at a study session? Would you like a subcommittee with getting council input on what the recommendations would be? Would you want, here's what other cities do, then give us more direction, we go back and write the policy? Or do we just want to bring a draft policy?
I think I would like to hear what other cities do, and I would also like to hear if other cities consider it a policy or if they codify this. And I don't know that we need a subcommittee or that any of us have the bandwidth for a subcommittee right now, but any other comments?
I'd like to research the leagues. They do an ethics training, so they may have some information as well.
Some feedback for that.
And I'd like to request that council members have a period of time to review prior to it being put on an agenda as a draft.
Okay.
Would you like a study session so that we can talk it through? Because I think sometimes it really helps to talk it through. Yes, I'm seeing nods of heads.
Okay, so my idea is we'll do a survey, we'll bring that back, we'll look at the leagues, we'll have a study session to talk about it, we'll get direction, and then we'll draft. We'll prepare the draft and we'll circulate that before we agendize it to get comments back.
Mm-hmm. Sound good to everyone? Councilmember Hendricks, do you have anything to add to that?
I've got one more question for Mr. Payne. How does this affect the existing complaint? The way the code's been interpreted in the past, it goes back a few years since we've had ethics complaints, but in the past it was always interpreted that it was investigated and it was always heard at a public meeting. Is the existing complaint or complaints, what happens to those? Do we need to address those now?
Mayor, Councilmember Hendricks, with these new changes today, they become effective now, but that complaint was filed before that. So that complaint's filed under the prior code. So to get it formally dismissed, it would have to be agendized, and then council could make it discussion or dismiss it or do whatever you want to do on that. Yeah, to agendize it, it would need 3 or more. Now, the town clerk had sent the email out saying if we don't hear for a while, it will be dismissed, and we will proceed with that if no one wants to agendize it. If we don't get 3 that want to agendize it, then we'll proceed with that route.
And that's what I was looking at, is the way that the email is written to us is that if 3 council members don't ask to agendize it, then it just basically dies.
That's correct. If we don't hear from council, at least 3, then it will be dismissed.
Councilmember Hendricks, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to future meetings. Well, we don't have anything to discuss other than our next meeting will be in 2 weeks. Communications, a report from the town manager on current events.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. One announcement from our chief of police. We're having an event at the Public Safety Training Facility this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Get to know Gilbert PD, Public Safety and Veterans, serving our community together. As part of the Get to Know Gilbert PD quarterly series, Gilbert Police will be hosting an event geared at educating our community about how law enforcement, courts, providers work together to help veterans diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. The event will kick off with a car show at 9 a.m. and go till 10 a.m., organized by the infamous Mopar Car Club, a nonprofit made up of veterans and car enthusiasts. And then there will be a panel discussion that will include licensed mental health professionals, veterans, and current law enforcement officers who will be able to together to discuss the many resources that are available for those with post-traumatic stress. So if you'd like to learn more about it, please show up at our training facility this Saturday at 9 a.m. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Patrick. Any report from council members on current events? No? None? Okay, report from the mayor on current events. Today is election day. I will thank everyone that has already turned in their early ballots and anyone that has dropped it off, hopefully by 7 p.m. this evening. I saw many residents turning them in at the fire admin building this morning when I was down there trying to shoot a little social media video. There were so many people coming and going that I was having a hard time doing it with all the residents, so I was having great conversations with them. Thank you for all doing that. I caution everyone as they watch the results, because we know a lot of early ballots were turned in, but we don't know how many will come in today that will still need to be counted over the next couple of days. So we just thank you for voting. Thank you for supporting the community. And then next week, as Peyton mentioned, we will have the Veterans event on Wednesday the 10th down at the Gilbert Regional Park. And we hope to see you all out there to recognize our veterans. I think it's going to be a stellar event. Last year's was really great, and it was their first one at that location. So thank you all. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.